I had faced monsters without flinching, but fighting beside humans. I learned true fear. Crixval stood at the observation deck of the Coalition outpost and watched the red sun of Vareth 7 sink below the horizon. The light painted his green scales in shades of copper and gold, but he felt nothing at the sight. Beauty meant little to a warrior who had long ago burned away such distractions from his mind. 217 battles. That was his count. He had faced the Devour swarms on Nexus Prime, creatures that moved like living darkness and consumed entire colonies in hours. He had stood against the Void Reapers, beings of pure psychic horror that drove other soldiers to madness with a single glance. He had walked through fire and poison and the vacuum of space itself, and he had never once felt fear. The Tyranni people called him Crixval the Unshaking, and he had earned that title through decades of service. His body carried the scars of countless wounds, but his mind remained as cold and still as frozen stone. Other warriors trembled before monsters. Other warriors hesitated in the face of death. But Crixval had purged such weakness from himself long ago. That was why this new assignment felt like an insult. Join operations with human forces, the orders had said. Humans. The youngest species in the Galactic Coalition, barely a century removed from their first steps into the stars. They were small and soft and fragile. Their bodies broke easily. Their lifespans were laughably short. What could such creatures possibly offer a veteran like him? He turned from the window as the door behind him opened with a soft hiss. 4 figures entered the briefing room, and Crixval studied them with the careful eye of a predator. They wore the dark gray uniforms of Coalition Rapid Response, but everything else about them seemed wrong for warriors. The leader was a woman of average height with black hair pulled back from her face. Commander Yoon Seo-jin, according to the files. She moved with quiet confidence, but her expression was calm, almost gentle. Where was the hardness that battle should have carved into her features? Behind her came a man with broad shoulders and an easy smile. Lieutenant Park Min-ho, the demolitions expert. He was already laughing at something one of the others had said, his eyes bright with amusement. Did he not understand they were preparing for combat? The third was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. Sergeant Cho Hae-won, the field medic. She carried herself with precision, but there was warmth in her face that Crixval found puzzling. The fourth was another man, Corporal Jang Tae-hyun, young and eager, barely old enough to be called a soldier. "You must be Crixval," Commander Yoon said, and her voice was steady and welcoming. "We have heard stories about you. The Unshaking. It is an honor to have you join our unit." Crixval gave a short nod. "I am here because command ordered it. I will perform my duties." If his cold tone bothered her, she showed no sign of it. Instead, she smiled. "We are glad to have you. Try to keep up." Park laughed at that, a warm sound that filled the room. "She says that to everyone. Do not take it personally." "I take nothing personally," Crixval replied. "Emotion is a distraction in combat. I have learned to fight without it." The humans exchanged glances that he could not read. Sergeant Cho tilted her head and studied him with curious eyes. "Without any emotion at all?" she asked. "That sounds lonely." "Loneliness is also an emotion," Crixval said. "I do not experience it." Commander Yoon nodded slowly, and something flickered in her eyes that might have been sadness. "Well, you are part of our team now. We do things a little differently, but I think you will adapt." She activated the holographic display in the center of the room, and a star map appeared. Red markers indicated Vraxith Dominion activity along the frontier, spreading like a disease across the sectors. "The Vraxith have increased their raids over the past month," she explained. "Colony worlds, mining stations, research outposts. They take what they want and destroy the rest. Our job is to respond when they strike and protect coalition citizens. The Vraxith are brutal, Krixval observed. They feel no mercy and offer no quarter. Many soldiers fear them. Do you? Park asked with genuine curiosity. No, Krixval answered. I fear nothing. Park whistled low. Must be nice. I get scared all the time. Krixval stared at him. A soldier who admitted fear so openly? Among the Tyranni, such a confession would bring shame. Yet Park seemed unbothered, even cheerful about his admission. Fear makes you weak, Krixval said. It slows your reactions and clouds your judgment. A true warrior eliminates it. Sergeant Cho shook her head. Fear keeps you alive. It tells you when something is dangerous. The trick is not to eliminate it, but to use it. Human philosophy, Krixval dismissed. It does not apply to me. Commander Yoon closed the display and faced him directly. Her eyes held his without flinching, and for a moment, he sensed something beneath her gentle exterior. Something harder and deeper than he had expected. You have fought many battles, she said quietly. You have faced monsters that would break most soldiers. I respect that. But you have never fought beside humans before. We are not what you expect. I expect fragile allies who will slow me down, Krixval said bluntly. She did not take offense. Instead, her smile returned, but this time it carried an edge. Then we will have to change your expectations. Get some rest. We deploy in 6 hours. The humans filed out of the room, their voices fading down the corridor as they talked and laughed together. Krixval remained alone, watching the empty doorway. Strange creatures, these humans. They smiled too much. They talked too much. They seemed soft in all the ways that mattered. But Commander Yoon's eyes stayed in his memory. There had been something there, hidden beneath the warmth. Something that whispered of depths he had not yet seen. He pushed the thought aside. It did not matter. He would complete this mission as he had completed all the others, alone in his mind, untouched by connection, untroubled by fear. He was Krixval, the unshaking. Nothing would change that. I had faced monsters without flinching, but fighting beside humans, I learned true fear. The assault frigate Defiance cut through the darkness of space like a blade through water. Krixval stood in the cargo bay and performed his combat exercises, moving through ancient Tyranni forms with mechanical precision. His muscles burned, and his scales glistened with effort, but his mind remained empty and calm. This was how warriors prepared. Through discipline, through silence, through the careful removal of all distraction. But the humans did not seem to understand this. Laughter echoed from the mess hall, and Krixval paused in his movements to listen. He could hear Park's voice rising above the others, telling some kind of story that sent the whole group into fits of amusement. How could they laugh when battle waited just hours away? He finished his exercises and walked toward the sound. Perhaps he could understand these strange allies better if he observed them. The mess hall was small but warm, filled with the smell of food and the buzz of conversation. The 4 humans sat around a table covered with trays and cups, and they looked up when Krixval entered. There he is, Park called out with a grin. Come sit with us. Have you eaten? Tyranni warriors fast before combat, Krixval said. Food dulls the senses. Food gives you energy, Sergeant Cho corrected gently. Sit down. You do not have to eat, but you can keep us company. Krixval hesitated, then lowered himself onto a bench across from them. The young corporal, Jang Taehyun, slid a cup of water toward him, and he accepted it with a nod. So, Park said, leaning forward with eager eyes, tell us about yourself. What is the most dangerous thing you have ever fought? Krixval considered the question. The Void Reapers of the Hollow Nebula. They exist partially outside normal space, and can reach into your mind. Most soldiers who face them lose their sanity within seconds. That sounds terrible, Taehan said with wide eyes. How did you survive? I had no thoughts for them to attack, Krixval explained. A mind that holds nothing cannot be broken. The humans exchanged those unreadable glances again. Commander Yoon set down her cup and studied him with thoughtful eyes. You emptied your mind completely? She asked. No memories? No feelings? Nothing at all? Nothing, Krixval confirmed. It is the only way to achieve true fearlessness. Park shook his head slowly. I could never do that. My head is always full of stuff. Mostly song lyrics and bad jokes. Is that why you laugh so much? Krixval asked. Even before battle? Especially before battle, Park said. If I might die tomorrow, I want my last day to be a good one. I want to spend it with people I care about, doing things that make me happy. But the laughter does not help you fight, Krixval pointed out. It helps me remember why I fight, Park replied, and for a moment, his smile faded into something more serious. I have a sister back on Earth. She has 2 kids, my niece and nephew. Every time I go into battle, I think about them. I think about keeping them safe. That is why I fight. Krixval did not know how to respond. Fighting for personal attachment seemed like weakness, like a chain that could be used against you. Later that cycle, the unit gathered in the training bay for combat drills. Krixval expected to see sloppy technique and poor coordination, but the humans surprised him. They moved together like a single organism, each one anticipating the others without verbal communication. When Commander Yoon shifted left, Park was already covering her flank. When Cho dropped to reload, Taehan stepped forward to protect her, and they adapted. When Krixval changed the parameters of the simulation, throwing unexpected enemies at them, the humans adjusted within seconds. They did not freeze or panic. They simply flowed around the new obstacle like water around a stone. You fight well together, Krixval admitted grudgingly after the drill ended. We have trained together for 3 years, Yoon said. We know each other. We trust each other. Trust is dangerous, Krixval warned. If you rely on others, their failure becomes your failure. Cho wiped sweat from her forehead and looked at him with something like pity. And their success becomes your success. Their strength becomes your strength. That is the point. She walked closer to him and examined the old scars that marked his arms and chest. Her fingers traced one particularly deep wound without quite touching it. This one almost killed you, she observed. Blade wound deep into the muscle. How long did it take to heal? 7 weeks, Krixval said. I fought again after 4. Alone? Cho asked quietly. Always alone. She met his eyes, and her gaze held steady. That sounds exhausting. Fighting without anyone to watch your back. Healing without anyone to help you. Have you never wanted someone to share the burden? Burdens are for the weak, Krixval said automatically. But something in her words stirred a feeling he could not name. A distant echo of something he had buried long ago. The ship's alarm cut through the moment, and Commander Yoon's expression changed instantly. The warmth vanished from her face, replaced by cold focus. Briefing room, now! They gathered around the holographic display as new information streamed across the screen. A mining station called Obsidian 12 had gone silent. Braxith raiders had taken it, and they were holding civilian researchers as hostages. 37 hostages confirmed, the intelligence officer reported. Mostly scientists and support staff, including 6 children. Something shifted in the room. Krixval felt it like a change in temperature. The humans had gone very still, and when he looked at their faces, he saw something new. Commander Yoon's jaw tightened. Park's easy smile had vanished. Cho's hands curled into fists. Even young Taehyun looked harder, older somehow. Children, Yoon repeated, and her voice had dropped to something cold and dangerous. We deploy immediately, she continued. Full combat loadout. We get those people out. Krigsval watched the humans prepare, and for the first time, he wondered if he had underestimated them. There was something in their eyes now. Something fierce and burning. Something that had nothing to do with training or discipline. He did not know what it was, but he suspected he was about to find out. I had faced monsters without flinching, but fighting beside humans, I learned true fear. The mining station Obsidian 12 floated in the darkness like a wounded beast. Emergency lights flickered through shattered windows, and debris drifted in the void around its damaged hull. Krigsval checked his weapon one final time as the assault shuttle approached the docking bay. Remember the mission, Commander Yoon said through the com. Hostage rescue is priority 1. We locate the civilians, secure them, and extract. Engage Raxith forces only as needed. Understood, Krigsval responded. He had done this 100 times. Infiltrate, eliminate, extract. Simple and clean. The shuttle locked onto the station's hull with a magnetic clamp, and Cho cut through the metal with a plasma torch. The team slipped inside, moving through dark corridors filled with the smell of smoke and something worse. Blood. The walls were streaked with it. Krigsval had seen blood before. It meant nothing to him. But when he glanced at the humans, he saw their expressions harden further. Park's jaw clenched tight. Taehyun's breathing quickened. Cho touched the blood on the wall and whispered something that sounded like a prayer. They found the first bodies in the research wing. Scientists in white coats, cut down where they had tried to run. The Vraxith had not shown mercy. Keep moving, Yoon ordered, but her voice had gone flat and cold. The station's layout led them toward the central hub, where heat signatures indicated the main Vraxith force. Krigsval counted the enemies on his scanner. 15 raiders, heavily armed and armored. A formidable force, but nothing he had not faced before. They breached the hub from 2 angles, and the battle began. Krigsval moved with practiced efficiency, dropping 2 Vraxith with precise shots before they could raise their weapons. The humans spread out around him, covering each other with the same coordination he had witnessed in training. So far, everything proceeded according to plan. Then they found the storage bay. Cho was the first through the door, and she stopped so suddenly that Krigsval nearly collided with her. He looked past her shoulder and saw what had frozen her in place. Bodies. Smaller bodies. The children they had come to save lay motionless on the floor, and beside them knelt the adults who had tried to protect them. The Vraxith had executed them, perhaps hours ago, perhaps just before the assault began. A sound escaped from Park's throat, something between a growl and a sob. Taehyun turned away and pressed his fist against the wall. Cho dropped to her knees beside the small forms, her hands reaching out as if hoping she was wrong. Commander Yoon stood perfectly still. Her face showed nothing, but Krigsval saw her hands trembling around her weapon. When she spoke, her voice was quiet and terrible. Cho, confirm survivors. Everyone else with me. We clear this station. No Vraxith leaves alive. Krigsval had received orders like this before. Total elimination was sometimes necessary. But something was different now. Something in the air had changed. The humans moved like he had never seen them move before. Park abandoned all caution and charged the next group of Vraxith with a scream that echoed through the corridors. A raider's blade caught him across the chest, cutting deep through his armor, but he did not slow down. He grabbed the Vraxith by its throat and threw it into the wall with enough force to crack bone, then kept fighting. Taehyun fired and fired and fired, his face twisted into a mask of fury that made him look like a different person entirely. Gone was the eager young soldier. In his place stood something older and angrier. Commander Yoon moved through the enemy like a ghost made of death. Her expression remained blank, empty of everything except purpose, but her body told a different story. Every motion carried the weight of rage behind it. Every kill was personal. Kriksval fought beside them, and for the first time in his long career, he felt something strange in his chest. This was not the cold efficiency of trained soldiers. This was not discipline or technique or skill. This was something raw and burning and utterly terrifying. The Vraxith had made a mistake. They had harmed children, and now they were learning what that meant. A raider twice Kriksval's size swung a massive blade at his head. He ducked and countered, but the creature was strong and fast. It pushed him back, and for a moment, he saw his own death approaching. Then Park appeared beside him, bleeding heavily from his chest wound, but still fighting. Together, they brought the raider down, and Park flashed a grin that had no humor in it. Thought Tirani did not need help. He gasped, "I did not ask for help." Kriksval replied, "Too bad. We are a team." Cho's voice came through the cum, shaking with emotion. "I found survivors. 17 hostages in the lower level. They are alive. The humans move faster. They had something to fight for now, something beyond revenge." Kriksval followed them through the station, watching as they cut through the remaining Vraxith with terrible purpose. The last raider tried to surrender. It dropped its weapon and raised its claws, making sounds that might have been pleas for mercy. Commander Yoon stopped in front of it. Her weapon was steady, her breathing calm. She studied the creature for a long moment. "The children," she said quietly. "Did they beg?" The Vraxith did not answer. Yoon pulled the trigger. When the battle ended, Kriksval stood in the ruined hub and watched the humans gather the survivors. Cho treated the wounded with gentle hands that had killed just minutes before. Park leaned against a wall and laughed weakly at something Taehyun said, even as blood dripped from his chest. These creatures made no sense. They cried and killed in the same breath. They joked while bleeding. They showed mercy to victims and none to enemies. They were not cold and efficient like Kriksval. They were burning with something he could not name. And standing among them, watching them care for strangers with the same intensity they used in battle, Kriksval felt an unfamiliar sensation creep into his empty mind. He did not recognize it yet, but it felt like the beginning of something he could not control. I had faced monsters without flinching, but fighting beside humans. I learned true fear. The medical bay aboard the Defiance hummed with quiet activity. Cho moved between the beds, checking on the survivors they had rescued from Obsidian 12. Some slept with the aid of sedatives. Others stared at the ceiling with hollow eyes, still processing the horror they had witnessed. Kriksval sat in the corner and watched. He had no injuries worth treating, but something kept him here instead of returning to his quarters. Something he could not name. Park lay on one of the beds, his chest wrapped in regenerative bandages. The wound had been deep, almost reaching his heart. Any Tirani warrior would have died from such an injury, or at least been disabled for months. But Park was already sitting up, complaining that Cho would not let him walk around. "You lost 2 liters of blood." Cho snapped at him. "Your lungs were filling with fluid. You stay in that bed or I will sedate you myself." "You are no fun," Park grumbled, but there was affection in his voice. Kriksval rose and approached the bed. Park looked up at him with tired eyes that still held a spark of humor. "Come to check on me?" he asked. "I am touched." "I came to ask a question," Kriksval said. "During the battle, when you were wounded, you did not stop fighting. The injury should have disabled you. How did you continue?" Park was quiet for a moment. His hand moved to his chest, pressing lightly against the bandages. "I kept thinking about those kids. he said finally. The ones we could not save. I kept thinking that somewhere in that station, there might be more. More kids who were scared and alone and waiting for someone to help them. I could not stop until I knew we had found everyone. But you were dying. Crixval pressed. Your body was failing. Bodies can wait. Park said simply. The people who needed us could not wait. So I kept going. This answer made no sense to Crixval. Fighting through mortal wounds for strangers? Ignoring every survival instinct for people he had never met? He left Park and found Commander Yoon in the observation deck. She stood alone, staring out at the stars. When he approached, she did not turn around. You fought differently today, Crixval said. All of you. It was not like training. It was something else. Yes, Yoon agreed quietly. I do not understand it. You were calm and steady before the mission. Then you saw the dead, and you became something else. Something I have never seen. Yoon finally turned to face him. Her eyes were red, and he realized she had been crying. This confused him even more. Warriors did not cry. We were not calm, she said. We were terrified. You showed no fear, Crixval protested. You moved with perfect control. Your hands did not shake. My hands always shake after, Yoon admitted. During the fight, the fear becomes fuel. It burns inside me and pushes me forward. But it is still fear. Fear of what? The Vraxith? They were strong, but you have faced stronger enemies. Yoon shook her head slowly. Not fear of dying. Fear of failing. Fear of losing the people I am supposed to protect. Fear that if I am not fast enough or strong enough, innocent people will suffer. She stepped closer to him, and her voice dropped to something almost gentle. When I saw those children on the floor, I was not angry at first. I was afraid. Afraid that we were too late for all of them. Afraid that somewhere in that station, more people were dying while I stood frozen. The anger came after, but the fear came first. Crixval struggled to process her words. Fear as a motivator? Fear as fuel for battle? But I had no fear, he said. I emptied myself of it long ago. How can I fight like you do if I have nothing to burn? Yoon studied him with sad eyes. Maybe that is why you fight alone. When you have no fear, you have nothing to lose. And when you have nothing to lose, you have no reason to care about anyone else. Her words struck him like a blade. Later, Sergeant Cho found him in the cargo bay. She sat down beside him without speaking, and they shared silence for a long time. You look different today, she said finally. During the battle, something changed in your eyes. I do not know what you mean. When Park was wounded, you moved to protect him. It was instinct. You did not think about it. You just did it. Crixval remembered the moment. The raider had been about to strike Park from behind, and Crixval had intercepted the blow without conscious decision. He had risked his own safety for a human he barely knew. It was tactical, he said, preserving unit strength. Cho smiled gently. Is that what you tell yourself? It is the truth. Maybe, she allowed. Or maybe you are starting to care about us. And caring is scary. It means you have something to lose. Crixval felt that strange sensation again, the one that had crept into his chest during the battle. It was growing stronger now, spreading through his mind like warmth returning to frozen limbs. He thought about Park's smile. He thought about Yoon's tears. He thought about Cho's gentle hands and Taehan's eager enthusiasm. He thought about what it would mean if any of them died. And suddenly he understood. The sensation was fear. Not fear of enemies or death or pain. Fear of losing these strange, emotional, impossible creatures who fought with such terrifying intensity. He had begun to care about them. And caring brought fear. and fear brought pain. For the first time in decades, Krixval the Unshaking felt himself tremble. But when Cho reached out and placed her hand on his arm, the trembling did not feel like weakness. It felt like waking up. I had faced monsters without flinching, but fighting beside humans. I learned true fear. 1 month had passed since Obsidian 12, and Krixval stood before the Coalition Command Board with his request. Permanent reassignment, the Admiral repeated, studying the document. You wish to leave the Tarani Expeditionary Force and join a human rapid response unit permanently. That is correct, Krixval confirmed. The Admiral leaned back in her chair. She was Velori, tall and silver-skinned, with eyes that had seen 1,000 wars. You are one of the finest warriors the Tarani have ever produced. The Unshaking. Why would you choose to serve with humans? Krixval considered his answer carefully. A month ago, he would not have known what to say. But things had changed. Because they have taught me something I did not know I was missing, he said. They've shown me a kind of strength I never understood. The Admiral approved his request. When he returned to the Defiance, Park was waiting for him in the corridor. His chest wound had healed, leaving only a thin scar that he showed off proudly to anyone who would look. He grinned when he saw Krixval approaching. I heard the news, Park announced. You are stuck with us now. It appears so, Krixval agreed. Cho is making a special meal to celebrate. She says you eat too little and need more weight on your bones. I told her you are covered in scales and probably do not need feeding, but she ignored me. Something happened that surprised them both. Krixval laughed. It was a small sound, rough and unpracticed, but it was real. Park's eyes went wide. Did you just laugh? Did the Unshaking just make a sound of amusement? Do not make a large issue of it. Too late. I am telling everyone. The celebration that night was small but warm. The 5 of them gathered in the mess hall, eating food that Cho had prepared and sharing stories. Taehan talked about his family back home. Park performed terrible impressions of other officers. Yoon smiled more than Krixval had ever seen her smile, and Krixval felt something he had not experienced since he was very young, belonging. These creatures had become important to him. Their lives mattered. Their happiness mattered. When Park laughed, Krixval wanted to hear more of it. When Cho worried, he wanted to ease her burden. When Yoon carried the weight of command alone, he wanted to help her shoulder it. This was terrifying and wonderful, and he would not trade it for anything. The alarm shattered the moment. Red lights flashed, and the ship's captain spoke through the comm. All hands, battle stations. Vraxith offensive detected. Colony World Sanctuary 4 is under attack. 2 million civilians at risk. The celebration ended instantly. The humans moved with practiced speed, gathering weapons and armor. Krixval followed them to the briefing room, where the tactical display showed the situation. It was bad. A Vraxith fleet had appeared from subspace, catching the colony's defenses by surprise. Ground forces were already landing, and the civilian population had nowhere to run. Coalition reinforcements were hours away, too far to help. We cannot wait for backup, Yoon said, her voice steady despite the odds. If we do not act now, those people will die. Our ship alone against their fleet? Taehyun asked. Commander, the numbers are impossible. I know, Yoon admitted. She looked around at her team, meeting each of their eyes. This mission is volunteer only. We are outnumbered and outgunned. We may not survive. Anyone who wants to stay behind, I will not judge you. Silence filled the room. Park broke it first. 2 million people. Including kids? Yes. Then I am going. Me too, Cho said without hesitation. Same, Taehyun added. They all looked at Krixval. A month ago, he would have calculated the odds and made a logical decision. A month ago, he would have felt nothing about the outcome. But he was not the same warrior he had been a month ago. "I am with you," he said. Park clapped him on the shoulder. "Scared yet, big guy?" The question would have confused him once. Now he understood it. "Yes," Krixval admitted. "I am scared." Park grinned. "Good. That means you have something worth fighting for." As they prepared for battle, Krixval found a quiet moment to compose a message. He sent it to his clan on the Torani homeworld, the first communication he had offered them in decades. "I have learned something important," he wrote. "Our ancestors spoke of fear courage, the strength that comes from fighting for what we love. I thought this was weakness. I was wrong. The humans have shown me that true courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to fight despite fear, because some things matter more than our own survival." He paused, searching for words he had never used before. "I have found a new family," he continued. "They are small and fragile, and they feel everything so deeply that it hurts to watch. But they are the bravest warriors I have ever known. I am proud to fight beside them. I am proud to fear for them." He ended the message and joined his team at the shovel bay. Commander Yoon stood at the front, her face calm, her eyes burning with that familiar intensity. Park cracked his knuckles and muttered jokes under his breath. Cho checked her medical supplies one final time. Taehan took slow breaths to steady himself. And Krixval, the unshaking, stood among them with fear in his heart and fire in his blood. He had faced monsters without flinching. He had walked through nightmares that broke other warriors. He had emptied himself of emotion and called it strength. But now, standing beside these impossible humans who laughed in the face of death because they loved life so fiercely, he understood what true fear meant. It meant having something precious. It meant having people who mattered. It meant knowing that the universe would be darker without them in it. It was the most terrifying feeling he had ever known. And as the shuttle launched toward battle, Krixval smiled. He would not trade this fear for anything in all the stars.